Hi, welcome to the session. Today we're going to be looking at Dua Lipa's new rules and how to recreate that in Logic Pro X. Dua Lipa's new rules is based upon a repeating riff that's pretty simple but compelling. So let's have a look. So here's the project for new rules, and it's at 116 BPM. These are the cold vocals for Dua Lipa, and let's have a listen to the track.
So many times, my love, he makes it feel like nobody else. One, don't pick up the phone, you know he's only calling cause he's drunk and alone. You ain't getting over him. I got no rules, I count 'em.
And yeah, that's basically the track. So, you know, as with most pop productions, you have repeated patterns. So let's have a look at the riff that's going on here. So this riff here sounds like this. And it just repeats throughout the whole song. This is a chord progression, and let's have a listen at the sound that we've built up. So the first sound is from Alchemy, and I looked under mallets because that's the kind of you know, the texture of sound that was happening there. Look under wood, and I found this one called Wooden Bells, and I mucked around with it, pushed it over to between solid and muted, and you get this kind of sound, right? And let's take out all the processing that's happening and just hear the pure sound. So it's a bit electronic, a little bit mallet kind of instrument. I EQ'd it to really take off all the low end and sort of bring up the high end. It sounds like this. Without. So it's just much brighter, right? And then I compressed it. So I put it on the compressor, slapped it on. I just found a fat clef, and then I mucked around with the threshold, and here's how it sounds. Just a bit more compressed and sort of like more present. You can see the gain reduction. So it's kind of getting there, but it needs that ambient kind of sound that's going on. So I put a space designer right on. I didn't send it to a bus, I just put it right as an insert on the channel. And I use a medium space gated reverb's percussion. So a gated reverb sort of like cuts off the tail of the reverb as it sort of decays, and that's the kind of gate sound. And I felt that it really worked for this. So here's how it sounds with a reverb. You can sort of hear the gating happen as the tail of the reverb disappears. And it sounds pretty good. I think that sounds pretty good. Now, but it's kind of not enough. So what I did was that I paired it with another instrument, and sometimes that works better. If you can't get the texture that you want from a single instrument, you just copy the MIDI over. You can see that I just copied the Wooden Bells over to the next track. And I went to look at sculpture. And I found some kind of mallet instrument as well. I found a classic marimba. And I did the same space designer thing on top. It's the same kind of reverb, and here's how it sounds. Now you can kind of see where I'm going with this, because this one I EQ'd all the low end off and put up some high end, and this one is kind of dark. And when you pair them, they kind of get a richer sound. So you kind of get that rich sort of wooden end at the bottom here, and you kind of get the high end sort of like synthy sound at the top here. So that's how I got the riff, and that goes on throughout the entire piece. And so the percussions, the first percussion we come across is this Latin kit, and here's the MIDI. And Latin kit, you can find it under World South American Latin kit. It's got this cajon kind of sound going on. And that's how it is in the original track as well. So it's got a cajon, and the best cajon and the only cajon I could find in standard instruments is under Latin kit. Now I took out the low end, I EQ'd out the low end because I didn't need any of the boom at the start. It's all just this top end percussion, and it's basically just repeating patterns. And it's really present as well. And paired with sort of like the reverb of the riff, it goes like this. So that goes on, you can see, it just repeats throughout the entire section. So let's go to the next step. And the next one is this little percussion track here. It's a really straightforward track. Here's how it sounds. So I found this kind of percussion tracks under World, South Asian, Indian and Middle Eastern kit. And it's just basically this kind of like shaker type thing. Let's take out everything. And it sounds like this. Yeah, so it's pretty heavy. So I thought I'll take out the low end and make it kind of like lighter and brighter. And then I thought maybe, you know, I just muck around with the attack a little bit and the release a bit. So it's kind of like a softer attack, right? Pull down the attack. And then I turn on the flanger because I felt like that's how it should feel. I used the yellow flanger as a bass to work from. These are the settings. And it sounds like this. So it's not as heavy as the original sound. And it kind of works with everything else. So it goes. And it repeats as well. There's a lot of repeating patterns. And here's where it starts to get interesting. Here's a sine bass. And basically it sounds, with the track, it sounds like this. And it's a really straightforward, deep kind of bass. So you can find that in ES2 under Synth Bass, a sine bass. So a sine is kind of like one of the most basic waveforms you can have. It's just like a really, when you use it as a bass, it's almost like a subby kind of sound. So that's from ES2, which you can find over here. And yeah, and this is, you can, okay, let's just solo it and have a look at the MIDI. So you can see some kind of a pitch bend over here. Let's see. Yeah, so that's what's happening, is there's a pitch bend happening on the sine wave track, right? Let's go back, let's zoom back out again. So you can see the pitch bend over here. If you go to events, you can see that under, let's just look at this one over here. Note, pitch bend all the way down, and then the low notes, right? And then we pitch bend up again. So I just copy these across. So it goes like, and the same pattern again. So it happens twice. And that is how that bass line goes. And if you notice, this side an electronic kick happens as well. So let's have a look at that. So sorry, it's not an electronic kick, it's an acoustic kick. Yeah, I picked the kick. You can go to drums and percussion, single drums, kicks, acoustic kicks, and just play around and find the one that works for you, for your track. So this one sounds like this. So it's got that kind of like clicky kind of acoustic duk duk going for it. Kind of works. And then you have this little accent over here. And I used Drums and Percussion Electronic Drum Kit's two-step remix. And it's just basically these two sounds. Right? And yeah, you can have a It's interesting. I think my low latency is set to on. I'm going to turn it back off. Yeah, and then you can see that this bus is on. So if you need to record something, sometimes I turn on low latency just to make sure I can record MIDI and everything in real time. And I turn it off because buses like that, just have a look, right? If I turn it on, it goes orange, which means it's disabled, and turn it on, the bus is back on. So there is a bus on, this one sent to bus 1, which has a reverb. And it's a large space halls, bright hall, and I push the wet to maximum, dry to 0. You get something like this. It's really big and bright reverb sounds together. Nice and bright. So yeah, that goes on, and when you hit to this point, there's a little transition here, and it's kind of like a reverse cymbal, but I don't use a reverse cymbal on this. I use something from a kit, which is under Drums and Percussion, Electronic Drum Kits, Big Beat Remix, and this note here is basically like a reverse cymbal. So it goes pretty straightforward transition over there. So these little accents like this one really help bring out some parts of the rhythm, make the song a bit more interesting, the arrangement more interesting. And so this part is sort of like the pre-chorus, right? The main pre-chorus. And this thing, this cajon, it's a copy of this track. It's just playing something different, so I used a different track. But here's the pattern. Yeah, it's just a bit more aggressive. And then I had a jazz kit, which you can find in Drums and Percussion, Acoustic Drum Kits, Jazz Kit. And just to give it a bit more, that kind of acoustic feel. So the brush is happening here. A bit more organic sounding, and you put it together. Just sounds a little bit more real and organic. The acoustic kick's still here, but now we have another kick. An electronic kick sounds like this. So a deeper kind of kick, and you can see that it's basically the same tracks, right? And this electronic kick is under single drums, kicks, electronic kicks, and I just picked this one. But you can play around, try different kicks and see how they sound compared to this one. So it's a matter of just sort of auditioning different kicks and finding out which one suits your sound that you want to achieve. So yeah, I think it kind of works. With two kicks though, sometimes you gotta be a bit careful not to have any flamming kind of, you know, they attack sort of like flam with each other. You get a tick tick kind of thing. So this one's work pretty well together. So that's fine. Now there's a little like bass line that's coming on. It sounds like this. And I really like the sound, so I'm going to show you what I picked. It's from, it's from Alchemy, yep, the synth. Under brass and trance, I found this smooth analog lead, put it to unison. It's got this nice fat sound. I think I mucked around with the ADSR a little bit, just to make sure it's sustained. I pulled it back, just to get that kind of short, like stabs. And I think it really works with it. This one is another kind of synthy kind of thing. I found it from ES2 under Synth Bass, real fat. I kind of like ES2 for this kind of like analog synthy kind of sounds, and Alchemy for the more, you know, the sort of more complex sounds. So these two together. And paired with the kicks, notice that the bass tends to be paired with the kicks, and that gives it a real sense of rhythm. They don't have to match one to one, but when they work together, it sounds really good. And then I have the same thing, I copied it over, but this time I mucked around a little bit, I think, with the resonance and some of these knobs, and it sounds like this. Yeah, so it's different from this. It's a bit more squeezed, a bit more squelchy, and there's an interesting thing we did with the sine bass over here. So it kind of goes like that. And but paired with sort of like this is a pitch bend, and an interesting thing is you don't have to record your pitch bends at the same time you're playing the notes. You can record, just copy the track. You can press Control Enter and it duplicates the track. This is the same track, by the way, and you can record separately. So this is what happens. Yeah, and it kind of works with everything. Yep. And here you have that break with the reverse cymbal again.
I got no counting.
And you have that little like fill coming in. That's the jazz kit. No, it's not a jazz kit. It's actually a two-step remix. So you can see like the sounds that I explored initially. I changed the track and, you know, to find the right sound. So it's under drums and percussion, electronic drum kits, two-step remix. And here's what it sounds like. And paired with the real jazz kit, which is the original sound. So when you put it together, it sounds like this. And I think it kind of works, especially with, I think, the extra tracks as well. I think it's this one. So it's like, it sounds like it comes from a single instrument. So the key is to blend different instruments in ways that work like they come from similar instruments. And this one is just an ultra beat thing, a drum and bass kit. Drum and bass kit 02, right? And I just found this particular sound. Just this snares. Yeah, so when you pair them together, they kind of seem to work in unison. Yeah, so. And then you have your sine wave bass again. I copied that track over. This one is a separate track. You can see that the levels are slightly different, but it's a pretty straight up pattern. Yep, and there's the kick here as well. Same electronic kick as before. Now this one, the horn, it's got this pattern. Quite iconic to the chorus. And what I picked was under orchestral, under woodwinds, an English horn. And I thought when I first heard it, I said, that sounds like an English horn. So let's muck around with that. So you got to find good bass sounds. Like I'm not treble and bass kind of bass, like the basic sounds to work from, and then muck around with those. So like in this case, I started with that. I take out everything. It just sounds, you know, it sounds pretty artificial, not very exciting, but let's EQ the bottom end off. Maybe a bit better, right? And then we compress it, compress the heck out of it. So I just used a VCA snare. I wanted it to pop a little bit. It's a bit more present, and then I added a space designer. Initially I sent it to a bus, but decided not to, and it's a bright hall again. Kind of works, right? And then you have another kick, and this is I think a really deep one, under Ultra Beat drum bass kit 02 again. So there's even like sort of bigger kicks, And this one is sort of like the side stick, right? Which is under a two-step remix. I've been using two-step remix a lot in this track. Yep, and that's how it sounds. And then there's a pad. Now this one's under Alchemy again. It's choir male ooh, and I go to muffled, right? It sounds like this. So it's pretty straightforward, no effects on it. It's just a pad, right? Kind of works with everything. And this one is the hat. And this hat, I got it from the classic house remix under EXS24, Drums and Percussion, electronic drum kits, classic house remix. Sorry about the drilling that you can hear. I think my neighbor is sort of doing a bit of renovation. But let's continue. And so you get this little like hat pattern. It looks like that. And I added a flanger. Just mucked around with the defaults, and these are the settings. And yeah. So a bit more interesting. A bit more interest in the sound. And now for the vocal shouts. Obviously, these are not the samples that you get in the original song. But I tried to find something close enough, and I used under textures, ambient environments, vocal shouts. Now, vocal shouts has many different kind of sort of shouts in this. If you just hear it by itself, it sounds like this, right? So I said, it needs to be much higher, right? So I added a vocal transformer. I pitched it up. I changed the format, pushed it up as well. So +6, +4, and it sounds. Yeah, that sounds more like the kind of shout that's in the track, the sample. EQ'd a lot of low end off as well. You know, a lot with these songs, right? With the percussion and accent type stuff, you can and should EQ off the low end to get rid of the muddiness. It sounds like this now. Kind of works. And then I sent it to bus 1. So that's the sample that I use. It's not the exact one. Kind of works for this song just to illustrate with you how it's done. And yeah, and you can see that the top pattern remains the same, but I have to show you the secret part of this whole sort of chorus kind of thing. Are these sort of top end loops. Because if I take them out, if I mute them, what you get is this. It loses its sense of sort of rhythm. So you have to have a lot of this kind of stuff. And let me just play to you. I found this in Apple Loops, so you can search your loops, you know, like tambourine. And then you just sort of remix tambourine or whatever it is you want. The green ones are MIDI and the blue ones are audio. So you just pull them into your project, drag them in. And this one sounds like this. Okay, not a bad bass to work from. But I need more, right? And I found this Latin percussion. Now we're talking. That's kind of more the kind of rhythm that I'm looking for. But I took off the low end as well because I kind of wanted to hide all that timbale and conga type stuff. So, and I felt like still wasn't enough. And so there's one more. And they kind of work together. So and listen without the vocals, this is how it sounds. So background rhythm, the top end, really makes a difference in the way you perceive the rhythm. And I think that it makes the whole world of difference. So, you know, when you're building your beats, make sure that you focus on these parts as well, because that really defines the feel of it. And that's it. I hope you learned something useful today, like how to really enhance your beats with some kind of top layer of percussion. It really brings out that feeling of moving and rhythm. If you like, you can download the project at the link below and have a play around with it. If you like these kind of videos, please subscribe for more. See ya!